Welcome to Real People, Real Stories podcast. I'm Rena, your host, and today I'm presenting you another real life story. My guest is Stacie Shifflett. At first glance, Stacie might seem like a woman who simply built a successful career, but her life has unfolded through bold shifts and unexpected chapters. She worked in federal technology and procurement without formal training, owned a construction company, and spent over a decade raising her family in rural America surrounded by llamas. After the collapse of her 28-year marriage, her journey took a deeply personal and spiritual turn. In this episode, we talk about Stacie's life story and the reinventions that shaped each stage of her path. Hello, Stacie.
Hi, Rena. How are you today?
Thank you. I'm very good because I'm very glad to have you here with me on the podcast.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Can't wait.
Then let's go. Stacie, you had so many different chapters in your life. Can you walk us through them in order? Where did it all begin?
Gosh, I have done so many things and been in so many different industries. I decided to go to work at 16 years old, waiting tables at a restaurant, and I wasn't required to. My parents were rather surprised, quite frankly, but I stayed in that industry for a number of years, and I even worked in the restaurant business while I was in college. I never did graduate college. And let's see, the short of it. Let's see, I got married in 1983 and decided that I might need something that was not in the restaurant industry, the hospitality industry. So a woman from my mother's church was kind enough to get me a job because it wasn't so easy to do in an office, just doing some light bookkeeping. And, I learned her word processing machine and anyway, small contractor, and she had federal government contracts, and her small staff kept leaving, and I kept stepping into bigger roles. And within a year of taking that position, I actually rolled out the first desktop computers to an entire U.S. government federal agency without any particular training. I'm pretty much self-trained. I've had some great mentors along the way. Somewhere along that journey, I transitioned into actually the first job I had in federal government procurement area where we automated all of those processes was working at a technical help desk for a software company that did that. I did that for a number of years. I was in that industry. I was regarded as a subject matter expert by the time that I exited that industry. And it was in that time frame that I had a crazy idea to buy one of these companies that I was familiar with. And I woke up one morning and said, I think I'd like to buy this software company, not having any idea what that meant or what a price tag might be or any of that. And as that unfolded, I just figured out how to do it, right? They had listed it with a broker, and I pulled the resources together that I needed and just figured out how to do it. It took me 9 months, and I was successful. That got me a very nice employment contract and what we call sweat equity, right? I had a percentage ownership in the company. And when the investors flipped it 5 years later, I took my money and got out, started a construction company. I closed that a few years ago. And in between there, as my son was born and we were raising a family, I was married at the time. I actually raised llamas, award-winning llamas that I showed all over the country for a little over a decade. So I've done a lot of different things, unrelated things and different things. And I think, I've always had a lot of confidence, but the confidence really for me was never about being good at something the moment I started it, right? It was always for me about trusting that I would learn, adapt, and excel at whatever I chose to do. So it's not from having it all figured out. It's knowing how I relate to challenge and growth and my understanding of myself.
Let me ask you this. Circling back to your life, you mentioned that you went to college, and after you mentioned that you started doing some things without any knowledge or education. So what did you study in college then? What was your major?
Yeah, I never finished. I went probably 2.5 years. So in essence, I got a lot of the basic credits out of the way. And I was going into, my goal was to do business administration. And Yeah, we didn't have all this stuff when I was at college, right? We didn't have the internet and laptops and computers and phones and all that stuff. I was waiting tables and bartending and that sort of thing while I was in school, and I had a couple of other odd jobs along the way. But when I say I'm self-taught, I would start a position somewhere and learn and excel and grow. And I had some very good mentors along the way. They served me well, and I served them very well also in that with my performance and my contribution.
That sounds great. I know it's not related to your life story, which we're focusing now. The question is, do you think now the market situation is different? Because a lot of people struggle to land a job because a lot of companies asking experience, and a few years back you were able to jump into jobs without any experience at all in the specific field.
I think it depends on the person, and your experience and your ability to sell yourself and learn and expand. It's not that I didn't hit any of that, because even back then, sometimes the prerequisite to get through the door was to have a college degree, and I did not have a college degree. I think that we have a situation now where we have so many people that have college degrees that have difficulty getting employment. So then sometimes it becomes, okay, you have the degree, but you don't have the experience. There's always excuses, but there's always ways around them too, I have found.
Okay, let's go back to your life. Have you thought at any point to go back and get any type of formal education? It shouldn't be in business administration. It could be something else, for example, in construction or the investment banking or something. Or you felt that it doesn't worth it?
Well, I did consider going back to school in sometime in the 80s, I'm going to guess. And when I looked at my work schedule and the school schedule and how many years it would take me to get a degree, quite honestly, for me, I was not willing to do that. I'm like, okay, if it's going to take me 5 years to get a degree going part-time, I'll have 5 more years of experience under my belt. And if I apply myself to my profession instead of the education, and I was being educated in my profession as well, right? Then I figured it was going to kind of be a wash. For me, I just did not feel that I needed that piece of paper to validate my value. And I'm not saying that other people do. My family was the same way, right? In that, they wanted me to have that degree. They placed a lot of importance on it. It certainly caused a little bit of frustration for my parents, probably, but I have just always been one to walk my own path and do my own thing and figure it out as I go. And I've been pretty successful at figuring it out, I guess.
From what you said, you definitely were. And that's great. You proved everyone is wrong in your family, that you don't need a piece of paper to be successful. Let's go a little bit back. What was it like pioneering desktop computers for a major US government agency so early in that field? Because you probably were the reason that the government is using the PCs and laptops.
It actually was such an interesting experience. So we had the hardware team that put the computers together and set them up. And then what I did was all of the implementation and training. And back then it was Lotus 123 and WordPerfect, and we had to use MS-DOS. I think the most interesting thing about it, I was helping them use the technology to apply it to their jobs. One of the most interesting things about it is it was a period of time where we used to have administrative or typing pools, right? Women were doing a lot of administrative work. And they had worked very hard to advance their careers into positions where they were not in the typing pool. They weren't a secretary, they weren't an administrative assistant or what have you. So that was my first foray into change management. And that was a lived experience for me. I had absolutely no idea that it was called change management. I don't even know that there was such a thing back then. That it might have been if you were in college, I have no idea. But there was a great deal of resistance from women because they had to start using a keyboard again. And a lot of them had worked their way up through their government positions, starting in a typing pool or an administrative pool. So for them, they really thought that it was a step backwards. So I really had to show them how to use the technology to their benefit. And that was tricky at times, but yes.
That's a very interesting point of view, actually. Well, I would not tell it sneak peek because it's already in the past, but you're opening the door on how it all started. That people with whom you work, they did not consider it as a progress, but rather as a regress. This is
Yes.
unexpected information.
Yes, it was really very, very interesting. The men were not opposed to it. There were reductions in the administrative support, right? But it really was, so you used to sit down with a piece of, a pad of paper, and you would write your thoughts and organize your thoughts, and then you would give that to somebody to type it all up. So it was really a different way to work, because instead of creating and organizing your thoughts on paper, you actually created and organized your thoughts in WordPerfect in this case, right? A lot of us use MS Word or whatever today, but it really was a change in how we work through that technology. And so it was really being able to articulate that to people so that they understood it wasn't necessarily regression. You're not really doing anything else, right? It kind of, once you get the hang of it, it really kind of makes it easier to write and to organize your writing, and most definitely to reorganize your writing yourself, rather than you getting this manuscript from the typing pool and you going through with a red pen and saying, oh, change this, move this here, do this, do that. So it really was a change in a thinking process as well, right? The whole creation process. It was very, very interesting. And these are the things that I just think of, right? So
Right.
yeah, I just sort of naturally do this.
Well, you were on the front line of the progress, and that is amazing experience.
It was a lot of fun too. Yeah.
Let me ask this. You mentioned you had your own construction company. So what drew you into owning a construction company? Because it was totally different from all your previous experience up to that point.
Yes. When they flipped the software company and I got out of that, I took my money and got out. My ex-husband, I was still married at the time, he is in construction, and he said to me that there was an opportunity for a certain certification in Washington, D.C. that nobody was able to fulfill. And in order to work in D.C., you had to be part of this program. It was called a certified business enterprise. I've never traded on being a woman-owned business. And that commitment was to hire a certain number of DC residents, generally those that they consider unemployable. Those are their words, not mine. I had to set up apprenticeship programs and so on and so forth to provide training, skill training, carpentry training, basic training. I mean, I don't know how to build I don't know how to do this. We built 5-story apartments. I don't know anything about framing or carpentry. I hired a brilliant young man to run it, and I had a great team that stayed with me to the end. And yeah, I actually that was interesting, when we talk about college. So we've had a lot of people that have left the trades, right? The typical, quote, blue collar jobs to aspire to have a college degree and have a better life. So the interesting thing there is, we did all supervision and we subcontracted out a lot of the labor, but the labor pool was shrinking for me to be able to find seasoned project managers that had on the ground experience building these large buildings, right? Because they were quite large. They were 5-story apartment buildings, built from the podium up. There'd be retail on the first floor in a city environment, which has its own challenges for getting cranes in and, things like that. It was interesting. So we had to hire DC residents because the District of Columbia had pretty much trashed all of their training programs as well at that time, but it just became unbearable. I was spending so much money trying to comply with their requirements, and they were very difficult. The people were very difficult to employ. They would show up to work for a week or two. And I mean, I did this for 10 years. So, and this was the norm. This was 99% of the time, right? They would show up, we would recruit, I'd go to job fairs and all of this stuff that the DC government put on, and we'd try to be careful. We'd recruit somebody, they'd work a week, maybe two. As soon as they got a paycheck, you wouldn't see them again. They'd be out, back on the street using drugs or whatever it was they did. I would have to enroll people in apprenticeship programs, formal apprenticeship programs. And I was more than happy to do that. And we very carefully recruited for that because there were a lot of issues in that particular demographic. For example, transportation was one. So I would make all these arrangements and pay for it. It was thousands of dollars. And the apprentice would not show up. And then the DC government would issue me a fine, right? They'd issue me a citation and a fine because I wasn't complying with their program. So the continued argument with them was, but I am, right? I'm trying. They're not showing up. And it got to be so difficult to manage that at some point I thought about pivoting, and then I thought about selling, and nobody wanted the headaches of the DC government. So I eventually just closed the business. And that gets into some of the work that I do today too, right? Because sometimes we have to make hard decisions or let go of things that we thought might turn out differently, but we have to take our actions so that everything is in alignment with our goals, right? And what we want to be experiencing in life. And it was a very good company for me for a number of years. And then it just got where it wasn't. And so after about 10 years, maybe 12 years, I got out.
Okay, let's move on to a different chapter. What motivated you to leave city life and move to rural America for 12 years and raise llamas?
Yes, I was pregnant and we were having a baby, and we decided that we wanted to be out of the suburban environment and in a more rural environment to raise our family. So that's what we did. We bought 40 acres and built a house and put up fencing and built barns. And I did research to see how I could keep the land and land use. And I've always loved animals. And I decided on llamas because I didn't have to slaughter them and I could manage them pretty much by myself I looked at things like buffalo, right? And you need a lot of infrastructure and manpower to handle buffalo. But I landed on llamas, and that's what I ended up doing. And I learned how to vet them and not only breed them, but birth them. I could turn babies around that were breech and all kinds of skills I learned there. But your kids, I just have the one son, but your children learn a lot in that environment about responsibility and compassion and life and the circle of life and death and birds and the bees and all that. So it was just an amazing, amazing experience for me. So I was fortunate in that I was able to stay home the first few years of my son's life. Usually people would call me because I was so good at what I did. So I would, have a little contract job here and there, or I might work from home doing some documentation or writing a proposal or something. But yeah, it was just an amazing experience.
Let me ask you this. You mentioned before that you went with your llamas to some competition. I even did not know that such competitions take place. I know dog competition, horse, cats, but llamas?
Yes, think of it. No, I think they do it in some other countries, but yes, there was national associations and regional associations, and there were, rather large shows. There were smaller shows at county fairs and state fairs and things like that, but there were some national shows and national auctions. At one point in time, I was fetching, about $15,000 a llama that I put in to the top rated auctions of the United States. I would cry. Everyone I sold, I would cry when I gave them to the new owner. And they were like, "Are you crazy? You just made $15,000 selling this animal." But I'm like, "I know, but I love it. And I bred it. And I will miss it. They were part of my family.
15,000 per llama. I had no idea.
I don't know that the market's doing that now. I've been out of it a long time, but they're like big fancy show dogs. You groom them and you walk them around. They judge conformation. They have something similar to an agility course, but with a llama, but you're leading it. It's not like dog agility. Yeah, it was a great period in my life as well. And I would load my llamas up in the trailer and drive them all over the country.
That sounds amazing. I think I might know the answer to the question, but I need to ask you. From all the experience you have been through, from all the jobs that you have done, which was your favorite part?
I am just generally very present with whatever I am doing and involved and passionate about what I do. So I don't think I had a least favorite. I've worked with a couple of people over the years that were not my favorite, but I would generally make a change to address anywhere where I was not happy, because who wants to go to work every day and not be happy? That doesn't sound like a sustainable solution for me. So I really enjoyed all of it. I think the dream come true was probably the farm. I had dreamed of having animals. I thought it would be horses, but I had dreamed of having livestock since I was very, very small. And there I was on a 40-acre farm with my beloved animals and a black 4-board creosote fence and barns. And yeah, that would probably be an amazing experience. And luckily for me, I have a vivid imagination. And if I ever want to go back there, if I'm meditating, I can take myself back to that experience. Yeah, it's always sitting in a particular place on the stairs outside the tack room. I can transport myself to that magic anytime I wish, without the 24/7 care. 365 days a year, regardless of the weather.
Yeah, well, you can hire somebody who can do it, and you can enjoy just the experience. Looking back, what do you think has been the common thread through all these reinventions?
I didn't realize this until much later in life, and probably not since the last 10 years. I was always very motivated to go my own way and chart my own path. But I didn't really realize that there is a value associated with that, and that it was a value that I held very strongly. And the word has just absolutely gone out of my head at the moment. I don't know. It'll pop in a second. Does that ever happen to you? Self-actualization. I had a very high value of self-actualization and really creating my own experience in this world. And that's what I have always tried to do.
Before we finish, what's the one thing you'd like listeners to take away from today's conversation?
I think believe in yourself and make sure that you are, to the best of your ability, that you enjoy what you're doing, that you are passionate about it, that you are aligned with it. I think I said a little bit earlier, if you go to work every day and you hate your job, rethink that. Why is that? What is it about it? Because sometimes we could reframe something and say, my job's not, my job is pretty good. I'm able to earn a living and I'm comfortable and it gives me free time to do the things that I want to do. So sometimes we might be criticizing ourselves for not climbing the corporate ladder. Like in technology, I used to have people, I don't know why people just want to stay in the help desk. We need people at the tech center, right? We need people answering those phones and providing that assistance. And they performed a very valuable service to the company and to our clients. And if they don't want to move up to management, that's fine. You don't have to do that, right? Don't try to define what they should be doing when they're doing what they want to do. So sometimes it's reframing it. And if you're really miserable and you have good reasons, figure out what those reasons are. Figure out something else to do.
Thank you, Stacie, and thanks for listening to Real People, Real Stories podcast. Join us next time for another inspiring story.